What if the TV show you've been watching dissolve in terms of marriage was covering something even more sinister than shattered hearts? What if the figure who preached family togetherness and religious devotion was quietly siphoning funds into secret accounts, not for the family, but for his own benefit and one wife alone? Tonight, we lift the veil of deception and infidelity, as court filings expose startling information on Kody and Robyn Brown's hidden bank accounts. Stick with me, because what you're about to hear will forever alter the way you view the whole Sister Wives saga. And before I get started, ask me in the comments, do you believe Kody's demise was due to love, greed, or deception? I'll be reading them all. The courthouse was abuzz. Journalists lined the front steps, cameras flashing, microphones stuck forward, all of them whispering the same thing. What was Kody and Robyn hiding all this time? Inside, the atmosphere was heavy. You could almost lick it with your tongue. That bitter metallic taste of fear and expectation. Kody Brown entered first, his expression rigid, his jaw clenched. He moved like a man attempting to convey confidence, but the flutter in his eye gave him away. Robyn came in behind him, her purse clutched tightly in her arms, her hands quivering so hard you might not even notice unless you were paying close attention. The documents, which had leaked, had opened the case wide. Family members who had never heard of any of the bank accounts. Accounts which, they said, had deposits going back years, all traceable to Kody and Robyn. And here's where it gets really strange. The money trail didn't end with secret accounts. It linked to real estate transactions, high-end purchases, and cash withdrawals that didn't square with the publicly marketed financial woes of the family. For years, the viewers witnessed Kody Brown standing before cameras declaring the family was bankrupt. He pleaded for compassion, explaining the Coyote Pass land was sucking the life out of them. Bills were stacking up. Sacrifices had to be made. Janelle and Christine even confessed to shelving their own aspirations, thinking every penny was for the future of the family. But the court documents told a different tale, one of deception. If you thought the drama from this family was strictly love and jealousy, think twice. The trail of money tells a whole other story of deception. The prosecution didn't delay. They presented a timeline, year by year, detailing how money that was meant to be placed in joint accounts had been diverted. Christine, whose arms were crossed in the second row, shook her head in disbelief. Meri, as impassive as ever, kept her eyes fixed on the judge, but you could see she was trying not to cry. Next was the first witness, a one-time accountant who was connected to the Brown family's business dealings. He testified with measured accuracy, describing how he had been urged to keep certain accounts off the books. His hands trembled as he described a heated session in which Kody supposedly instructed him, "Family don't need to know everything. They just need to trust me." The courtroom erupted into whispers. This wasn't the Kody that the world recognized from TLC. This wasn't the man who declared he only wanted what was best for his wives and children. This was a man who was charged with secrecy, control, and manipulation. Midway through the testimony, Robyn fractured. Tears streamed down her face as she held a tissue, speaking softly to Kody. "They don't understand. They don't know what we went through." But Christine wasn't going for it. She sat forward, her voice slicing the silence like a blade. "What we endured, Robyn, we trusted you. We thought everything you told us about the money being tight. And meanwhile you were living better than us? How could you?" The judge banged the gavel, calling for order. But the harm was done. The dynamic in the room had changed. What if the one you trusted with keeping your family afloat was quietly amassing a fortune in your blind spot? That was the question Christine, Janelle and Meri were left facing, looking at the man they once referred to as husband. The drama heated up throughout the day. Each new paper, each word pushed it further. Viewers at home, stuck on their phones for live updates, couldn't fathom it. Was this the end of Kody Brown, not only as a husband, but as a patriarch, as the head of the Sister Wives saga? By mid-afternoon, a bombshell piece of information fell. One of the secret accounts had been opened in the name of a trust that left out 3 of the wives completely. Only Robyn and Kody were included. The message was obvious. While the rest of the family lived on bread and water, their sacrifices had been used to build a future for just 2. This wasn't a fiscal betrayal alone. It was the rewriting of a family's history under their very noses. Janelle was next to testify. Her voice wavered initially, but then firmed up, becoming laced with anger. "I sacrificed so much. I thought we were creating something together. And then I discover it was never for me. It was never for my children. It was always for them." She pointed directly at Robyn. Robyn brought her head down, not being able to look at her. Kody interrupted him, his voice elevating. That's not true. You have no idea how complicated this is. I did what I had to do to keep us safe. The judge halted him, cautioning that such outbursts would not assist his cause. But the expression on Christine's face was more than enough. She didn't believe a single word of it. If Kody would so easily lie about money, what else was he keeping from the family? Fans and relatives alike started to question, was this the beginning of the iceberg? Or was the entire story a house of cards constructed to be an illusion? As the first day of testimony ended, the Browns walked out of court in silence. Cameras flashed, questions flew, but no one said a word. Only their faces told the story. Robyn streaked with tears, Christine's burning with rage, Janelle's lined with betrayal, Meri's hardened into stone. Kody, though, looked straight ahead, jaw clenched, eyes narrowed. He wasn't beaten yet, but unknown to him, the next witness in the pipeline would throw a punch that even he couldn't weasel his way out of. Sometimes the most lethal secrets are the ones you believe will forever be kept hidden, until they're pulled out into the open where everyone can view them. The following morning, the courthouse was even fuller. News of the leaked accounts had traveled overnight like wildfire. Fans, critics, and reporters filled the gallery, whispering, guessing, anticipating the next revelation. And no one could have imagined what was about to happen. The Browns weren't only questioned regarding secret accounts anymore. They were about to experience testimony that would shake the very foundation of their faith. A witness had appeared with evidence, not only of money being stashed away, but of coercion, manipulation, and deception. What had been presented as a tale of finances was turning into a tale of betrayal on the greatest level. Picture spending decades of your life with a man, only to discover that the vows he had made weren't so much broken as they had never existed in the first place. That's where the sister wives were at now, and the courtroom was on the verge of blowing up with details nobody could have anticipated. As the judge bellowed order, the next witness was brought in. A clean-cut man in his late 40s, with a calm demeanor, clutching a leather folder under his arm. The bailiff administered the oath to him, and there was a deafening silence in the room. This was no ordinary witness. This was one of the former bankers, the same guy who had facilitated the creation of the secret trust in the names of Kody and Robyn. He spoke slowly, each word like a hammer strike. I was told to keep the dealings secret. Mr. Brown required that the accounts be so arranged that they could not be traced back to the family's public enterprises. Gasps were heard. Christine sat back in her chair, her mouth agape. Janelle was writing frantically in her notebook, her face ashen. Meri was silent, but held the arm of her chair so tightly that her knuckles were white. The banker unfolded his folder, pushing papers over to the court clerk. These, he went on, are the deposits from the joint family ventures. And these are the withdrawals, all signed by Mr. Brown, occasionally with the initials of Mrs. Brown on them too. The judge read through the documents, scowling. Then he turned to look at Kody. Mr. Brown, these transactions were not reported in your financial affidavits. How do you account for that? Kody shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his face reddening. It wasn't a lie, he protested. It was protection. If other people knew what we had, it would endanger my family. I had to keep it apart. I had to protect them. But his words were empty, and everybody in the room knew it. When the excuses no longer hold water, that's when the truth begins to seep through. And Kody was seeping credibility at a rapid rate. Robyn dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, her voice cracking as she attempted to defend him. He was just doing what he believed was best. You don't know the pressure we've been under. Everyone assumes they know. But they don't. They don't get to see what goes on behind closed doors. Christine banged her hand on the bench. Behind closed doors. Robyn, we lived through it. We were present when the bills weren't paid, when our children had to do without, when we were told there was nothing left. And all the while you two had a secret stash. The judge called for order once more, but the cracks were beginning to appear. The wives weren't only testifying against Kody anymore. They were unpacking years of devotion for the whole world to see. What happens when devotion ultimately breaks? When love becomes mistrust, and mistrust becomes irrefutable evidence. That was the tempest brewing in this courtroom, and Kody was right in the middle of it. The banker went on, uncovering even more incriminating facts. Significant cash withdrawals overlapping family fights. Funds transferred mere days before Christine filed for separation. Transfers suspiciously timed during real estate disagreements at Coyote Pass. The trend was unmistakable. With every time Kody lost his grip, The funds transferred toward him and Robyn. Janelle's testimony came next. She spoke quivering, but the words sliced deep. I was the one who surrendered my retirement money. I was the one who trusted Coyote Pass, who believed we were all in this thing together. And now I realize that the land was merely a pretext. You never intended for us to be equal. You intended for us to carry you. Her voice broke on the final word, and tears finally streamed down her face for the first time. Kody moved forward, his voice soft, almost begging. Janelle, that isn't true. You know I love you. You know I wanted this family to make it work. But she shook her head, looking directly through him. No, Kody, what you wanted was control. And you had it. Until now. The worst betrayals are not from those who are always trying to do us in. It is from those we once trusted with our very lives. As if tension was already running high, the prosecutor dropped a new bombshell. Recordings, phone calls between the banker and Kody, ordering him to keep the accounts off the radar. The tape was piped through the courtroom speaker. Kody's voice was recognizable, strong, authoritative, without any hint of shakiness. See that the others don't know. This must remain a secret. I can't have them questioning me. The words lasted in the air like smoke. Picture this. You hear your husband's voice, not in love letters or sweet nothings, but in cold, calculating commands to conceal money from you. That's what the sister wives heard in that moment, and that destroyed the illusions they had left. Christine rose to her feet, unable to hold back. You lied to us, all of us, and for what? For power? For money? You ruined this family, Kody. You ruined it. The judge granted recess, allowing the Browns some time to catch their breath. But outside the courthouse, the media swarmed. Questions flew. Kody, did you steal from your wives? Robyn, did you know about the accounts? Christine, will you press charges? Robyn was gripping Kody's arm. Mascara streaked down her face. They don't know you, she whispered, for cameras to hear. They don't know your heart. But the world had only just heard his voice on these tapes. And that was a reality. Even Robyn couldn't sob away. Once the mask has slipped, it can never be refitted. And Kody's mask had just been smashed right before millions. The Browns returned to court for the afternoon session. But the atmosphere was different. It was no longer suspicion. It was proof. And the next witness was going to push it all further. A member from within the family itself. When the judge stated the name, Christine's eyes widened, and Janelle made an audible gasp. It was someone nobody would have suspected. And so, the whole courtroom held its collective breath for the impact. Each courtroom has its pivot moment. That one instance when the narrative shifts from speculation and hearsay to hard and fast fact. For the Browns, it was now. Because the next witness wasn't a banker, an accountant, or a stranger in the street. It was someone who was part of the family, someone who had shared their dinner table, heard the midnight fights, and seen the money secretly drain through the cracks. When the bailiff said their name, the whole courtroom came to a standstill. This wasn't another testimony. This was a betrayal from within. A voice that could topple Kody and Robyn's carefully constructed empire to its knees. And the surprising twist, the witness wasn't who anyone anticipated. The room was silent as Peyton Brown, son of Christine, made his way to the stand. Tall, stern, eyes narrowed in a combination of anger and determination. This wasn't numbers to him. This was family, betrayal. Watching his mother's heart shatter while money transferred behind closed doors. Christine's hand flew to her mouth, waterworks brimming at once. Janelle gasped in shock. Even Meri leaned forward, her face breaking open for the first time. Kody's expression, however, said it all. Red, strained and embossed with fear. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? The bailiff inquired. I do, replied Peyton, his tone firm though the significance of the moment was overwhelming. The prosecutor moved quickly. Mr. Brown, is there something you can tell the court about what you observed while under your father's roof? Peyton leaned into the microphone. I saw everything. I heard everything. My dad told us we were broke. He told my mom we had to sacrifice. But I also saw things he didn't want us to. Late night phone calls, secret meetings with Robyn, money being moved when he thought nobody was watching. Gasps spread throughout the gallery. Kody leaned forward in his seat, holding onto the table. Robyn had her mouth covered, whispering angrily in his ear. When the truth is from your own child, there's no more hiding. The lies disintegrate quicker than you can keep them intact. The prosecutor continued. Mr. Brown, did you ever discuss these actions with your father? Peyton nodded, his jaw clenched. Yes, I asked him once why he was lying about the money. He looked at me straight in the eye and said, you don't understand. One day you'll thank me for this. But how do you thank someone for ripping a family apart? Christine hid her face in her hands, her body trembling with soundless sobs. The judge allowed the silence to lengthen, the magnitude of Peyton's statement heavy over the room. Kody at last cracked, slapping his hand down on the table. This is absurd. He's only a boy. He doesn't know what he's saying. But Peyton did not blink. He gazed straight at his father, his voice increasing. I know precisely what I saw. And I know precisely what you did. The courtroom broke open, reporters filling notebooks, cameras firing, onlookers murmuring. The judge called for order, but the flames had already been set. What do you do when the very ones you raised, the children you said you protected, turn against you before the public? For Kody, it wasn't a trial anymore. It was his own family putting him on trial. Peyton went on, telling how Christine would work late at the kitchen table, worrying about bills, and Robyn would show up with new furniture, new clothes, and mystery luxuries. We knew something was wrong, he said, but we were told to shut up, to trust Dad, to believe the plan. The prosecutor drew in closer. And what do you believe now? Peyton gazed straight at the jury. I think he never had a plan for us. He just had a plan for him and Robyn. Janelle wrapped her hands tightly in front of her, her lips quivering, while Meri shook her head slowly, as if each word validated what she'd secretly suspected for years. Kody buried his face in his hands, but the harm was already done. Sometimes, the ugliest truths are not found in documents and recordings, but in the people who experience the deception for themselves. The prosecutor was not finished. Mr. Brown, do you have evidence to back up these allegations? Peyton blushed, then took a tiny USB drive out of his pocket. I taped one of the conversations. My dad instructed Robyn to keep the others in the dark. He said they would never get it. The judge's eyes opened wide. The clerk took the drive, and suddenly the courtroom was filled with the voice of Kody once more. But not with bankers, not with strangers. This was Kody, in his own house, talking to Robyn. They'll never get it. His voice rang through the speakers. They're too emotional, too short-sighted. This is about us, our future, not theirs. Robyn buried her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. Christine glared at Kody, shaking her head in rage. Janelle whispered something under her breath, too low to catch, but the pain in her eyes spoke volumes. What would you do if you found the life you built with someone never involved you in the future? That the whole dream you gave up for was intended to exclude you? That's the new reality. Christine, Janelle, and Meri found themselves in. The tape stopped, and stillness engulfed the room. Even the judge appeared discomfited, slouching back in his seat, as if attempting to absorb the magnitude of deceit. Kody did rise, his voice breaking. You don't get it. None of you get it. I was attempting to safeguard something important. This family was crumbling, and I had to make decisions, tough decisions. If you consider me the bad guy, so be it. But I did it for survival. Christine leapt to her feet, her rage shaking in her voice. Survival? You refer to this as survival. You robbed us, you deceived us, you left us with nothing, and built your future with her. She stabbed her finger in Robyn's direction, who sobbed loudly in the room. The judge hammered his gavel wildly, commanding her to be quiet. But nothing could be quieted now, about the truth. Once betrayal is said out loud, it can never be unsaid. And the Browns had just passed a boundary they could never recross. The judge called for a recess, but the courtroom never quieted. The reporters poured out to make their phone calls to the editors. The fans outside were screaming for the truth. The world was watching, and the tale had just turned darker than anyone had ever anticipated. And as Kody resumed his seat, his head in his hands, one question loomed in the air. If his own son was going to testify against him, then who would be next? The answer was going to stun them all. What do you do when the empire that you've created for television begins to fall apart? Not due to family drama alone, but due to money trails that you thought no one would ever follow. Court records don't lie. And for Robyn and Kody Brown, those documents became more than lines on a page. They became a time bomb. These were not merely bank statements. They were a blueprint, a guide, a hidden playbook detailing how cash flowed in the shadows. And once the initial leak to the surface occurred, everything fell apart. Consider this, the very same man who had long stood defiantly on television, proclaiming himself the head of a unified plural family, now found himself hiding financial details behind closed doors. And his wife, the woman who was supposed to be his soulmate, wasn't simply standing by him, she was reportedly assisting him in constructing the walls that concealed the truth. But this is the chilling aspect. While viewers believed the series was all about faith, love, and sacrifice, the truth exposed by these court documents indicated something more sinister. A tale of fraud, betrayal, and manipulation. And this is where you have to lean in, because what you're about to learn is the point at which those leaks flipped everything. The documents leaked didn't just refer to a single secret account. There were rumors of several accounts, scattered across various banks, with fluctuating balances that never reconciled with the family's reported income. On the surface, it may appear to be shrewd budgeting. For detectives, however, these trends set off alarm bells. Why so many accounts? Why so many abrupt transfers? And why did the figures always tend to peak right before large family moves, such as from Las Vegas to Flagstaff, or just before large property transactions? This wasn't by chance. This was a tactic. If you thought that this was all about a single secret account, wait until you see how many layers of deceit the Browns supposedly constructed. Because the deeper you dig, the more shocking it gets. Christine, who by now had separated from Kody, was said to feel justified. She had repeatedly asserted that finances were coming in from directions the other wives didn't entirely comprehend. Now, with receipts in support of those misgivings, her words carried more authority than ever. Meri, as well, noticed the cracks. Once deeply loyal to Kody, she began wondering if the man she had stood up for all these years was the same man putting his signature on these financial moves. And Janelle, for her, it wasn't suspicion any longer. It was evidence. She had invested years of her life into a dream called Coyote Pass, trusted in Kody's leadership. But when the leaks revealed transfers out of accounts that had been intended for land and into accounts that were directly connected to Kody and Robyn's names, that trust wasn't shattered. It was broken. Fans who had once regarded Robyn as the favorite wife began now referring to her as something else, the accomplice. Social media exploded with comments, speculation, and outrage. How was it possible for a family that espoused honesty and togetherness to enable this amount of secrecy? The leaks did not merely question where the money had gone. The leaks brought up much more of an uncomfortable question. What else had Kody and Robyn been keeping secret all along? Because if these court documents disclosed hidden bank accounts, what's keeping us from thinking that there are more hidden secrets deeper still? Secrets we haven't even discovered yet. This part of the released papers indicated Robyn as being more than a mere passive party. Her name wasn't merely affixed as Kody's wife. Rather, her signatures, her authorizations, and her electronic prints were scattered all over the financial paper trail. For most, this was the smoking gun. It indicated Robyn wasn't merely a beneficiary of Kody's decision. She was purportedly assisting in constructing the system. Together, they had established what appeared less like a family budget and more like a web corporative. The emotional impact was even more significant than the monetary shock. Christine indicated she couldn't envision ever again trusting Kody. Janelle admitted to feeling betrayed beyond words. Meri wrestled with denial, torn between years of commitment and the bitter bite of evidence. But it wasn't only about the wives. The children too were left asking themselves if their father could keep something this huge a secret. What else was he keeping from them? The leaked papers rocked the very foundation of Sister Wives. What began as a show about love and togetherness now resembled a study in domination, secrecy, and scandal. But here's the twist. The leaks weren't finished, because just when fans thought they had heard it all, another batch of documents emerged, with even more shocking information. What if I told you that all we've learned so far, the clandestine bank accounts, the unusual transfers, the financial betrayal, was just the tip of the iceberg? That the most damaging of revelations were still waiting in plain sight, hidden in the final pile of leaked documents. Because when those final pages were revealed, they didn't just reveal numbers, they revealed intent. This wasn't careless record-keeping, this wasn't a harmless mistake. These records created the image of intentional action, accounts meant to hide money from discovery, and maneuvers that appeared scheduled for evasion. And the singies on those documents, Kody Brown and Robyn Brown, in the spotlight. Now ask yourself this: if the man who built his reputation on faith, family, and transparency was willing to go this far in secret, how much of the story we've seen on television was real, and how much was an illusion carefully crafted to protect the truth? Stick with me, because these last few reports don't simply detail where the cash disappeared, 2. They leave the ominous question of whether Kody and Robyn ever intended to build that future at all with anybody else. The last batch of court records confirmed something the fans had long speculated about: a secret trust account. Unlike the scattered accounts at banks in the past, this one was centralized, consolidated, and masterfully hidden under the name of Robyn. Inside that account, the balance shocked even the most cynical observers. We're not talking about a few $1,000s tucked away for emergency. We're talking hundreds of thousands, accumulated over years, with deposits matching the timeline of Sister Wives filming seasons, book sales, and even merchandise deals. It was as though every financial stream that flowed into the family found its way, eventually, into this single account. And here's the twist: the money that should have funded 4 wives, 18 kids, and a huge family system seemed to be gathering in one location, a location only Kody and Robyn had control over. The records revealed deposits that seemed squarely connected to real estate sales and TV salaries. Most upsetting to fans was the timing. Large deposits were made following Christine and Janelle investing in the Coyote Pass pipe dream. But instead of those dollars constructing a group future, they were channeled into accounts associated with Kody and Robyn. This was not favoritism. To Janelle and Christine, it seemed like thievery of their trust. To Meri, it was another nail in the coffin of her decades of devotion. Analysts and fans alike started piecing together a story. Was Kody planning for a life with Robyn, only financially and emotionally shutting the others out years before the relationships completely broke down? The proof appeared to back it up. Court documents suggested property deeds retitled and joint ownership with Robyn, with other assets, cars, investments, even business accounts, quietly transferred out of the broader family. It wasn't about secret bank accounts anymore. It was about a future Kody seemed to be creating behind the scenes, one that left Meri, Janelle, and Christine utterly scrubbed. When the leaks reached the public, the response was explosive. Christine publicly announced she felt set free, stating the truth finally vindicated her choice to walk away. Janelle cried heartbreak, confessing she had once thought Kody would never betray her on such a level. Meri, with a subdued but strong statement, stated she wasted years justifying a man who obviously took a different path long ago. For Robyn, however, the silence was deafening. She didn't provide an elaborate explanation. She didn't stand up for the paper. Her silence on its own was its own response, and to many fans, it was as clear as any admission of guilt. By this time, the public had made up their minds. To some, Kody and Robyn weren't merely guilty of favoritism and secrecy. They were guilty of intentionally tearing down a family in order to secure their own future. The now married patriarch of a plural family was now considered to be the builder of its destruction. The man who commanded loyalty and submission had only been faithful to himself and to Robyn. So here's where we leave it. Not with a tidy conclusion, but with a question that will not be silent. What comes next? Because if these leaks are genuine, if these documents are genuine, then Kody and Robyn might not only have to deal with the anger of fans or the hurt of loved ones, they might have to deal with something much, much worse: legal action. And here's the scary thing: if those secret accounts were only half the picture, what else remains hidden in the dark, waiting to come to light?